What was the name of that show?
It was Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. It was like a series of YouTube videos that kind of came out of nowhere, and they're done in the style of like a children's educational video with like Muppets almost.
Okay.
Um, and they have sort of everyone has this basically starts the same way where there's these three characters hanging out, and then another character comes along and teaches them something through an educational song, but it always has like this horror twist, like so.
Huh.
The first one, the song is about being creative, and it ends up with them, cooking a cake made out of flesh. Like it gets very disturbing imagery, and it's all still like puppets. So
Right.
it's
Or
like
and it's stylized like a children's show would be.
yeah, yeah. And oh man, it's so freaky and so good. And on top of that, they also had this like weird ARG going on where like they would release clues about what was really happening, and
Hmm.
it got crazy. It was really cool. It's just like six short clips, and that was it. And then they got really popular, and now they're like doing a TV show, and they have merchandise, and it's like
Yeah.
feels a little like the magic is gone. I don't know what the word for that is.
Yeah.
You know
No,
what I
I know
mean?
what you mean because like we were talking about off camera with Meow Wolf, what was amazing to me was this like the Santa Fe art collective. There's enough artists in Santa Fe to make this place happen, and they're it's this weird little community, this weird little conclave or enclave of artists that they all moved out to the mountains. They all moved to Santa Fe, or they all are from there or whatever. And it was just this thing of like, let's just do something super weird here together. There's enough of us to do something like this.
Yeah.
And then they did, and it was cool. And it became so cool that people with money were like, we should do this more places. And now it's just, they're, I don't think the Las Vegas one is local Las Vegas artists who were part of a community doing something. I think they're hiring artists and giving them a room to decorate and be weird in this room.
Well, and they probably have to like honestly, like knowing Meow Wolf, like they probably have like a whole like style guide for it too. Like it
Yep.
can't just be like do your own style. It's like it's got to be, because people pay to go and see
Yes.
Meow Wolf.
Exactly. So the original one was just yeah, like we said, was just local artists like banding together to do something. And yeah, now whoever the money is, they have exactly the style guide. They have their brand measurements and stuff like that. Did you ever see that? Did you ever see that infamous Pepsi Cola rebrand document?
Mm, I think I heard about that. Yeah.
Pepsi's like brand design or marketing design people, when they were revamping their logo from the old like italics Pepsi from the whatever to like just the circle with half blue half red, they had this incredibly elaborate document on here's the science behind our logo, and they did all circles and whatever the golden ratio is and all. It's just they just broke it down so ultra scientifically, but none of it meant anything. It's just a here's the emotions that your shapes should evoke, and that only works at 20 degrees and 75 degrees, and just it was all meaningless, but it was like a 400-page styled document
In a
created by
way,
corporate
I
people.
I almost prefer that to like the obviously corporations exist in our world and do all their shit or whatever. I almost prefer that more to the image of like a executive standing in the back of the room of the Meow Wolf business meeting and being like, be more quirky, make it weirder.
That's a good point. Yeah, I guess Pepsi's not disguising themselves as an art
Yeah,
commune.
exactly. I mean, the whole we've scienced out which Pepsi logo is going to make you most horny for soda is like that's very on brand for them.
Yeah, that's their entire job is to justify why do we need this. Whereas yeah, again, Meow Wolf started as something. So, and who, you know what? I should preface this with saying I don't know what I'm talking about. It could be entirely possible that the same collective of people that created Meow Wolf Santa Fe, it could be them doing it in other cities. They could just be taking the show on the road. Maybe it's still you know, maybe it's still Jerry Garcia, and maybe it's still just the roots keeping it alive. I really don't know, but I do know, and of course it's not it. Of course, there's corporate
But
money
I
involved
don't know,
now.
but I think I do know. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, even if it is the original artists, like they have gotten money, so much money from this. There's no way that they're still like. I mean, and they are opening stuff in Las Vegas, and like it's clear what their motivations are.
Las Vegas is the really egregious one because you could still be like Denver's a. Actually, you know what? Maybe Dallas is the egregious one because you could say Denver's like still an art town, whatever, that's fine. But once you open one in Vegas, it's like, who's this for? I mean, this is like
The people of Vegas. Hey, shh, sorry, my dog is. The people of Vegas, they need it.
yeah, exactly. It's once you have an art thing in Vegas, it just becomes a thing for hungover parents to take their kids to in the morning before they or even drop their kids off at so they can go back to gambling and drinking. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah, kids, you hang out at the weird art thing while
leave them
daddy hits the tables.
yeah, exactly. Give your 13-year-old a $50 bill and make her watch the 7-year-old, and y'all just hang out at this art thing, go through all these rooms. We're going back to the tables, and we're trying to pay for tomorrow night's hotel room.
It's barbaric. Barbaric.
Yeah.
Speaking of, did you like that?
I do. I do. You're the master of segues. Everybody knows that about you.
It's true.
That's what all the listeners have been calling you.
Wow.
You should have Andres back on. He's the master of segues.
I need like a little musical sting. Master of segues.
Yeah. Barbarian. And
Barbarian.
so that's what we're talking today, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Get Trashed. I got with me with my buddy Andres, which I'm sorry, I've pigeonholed you into horror movies because that's all we've talked on this show so far.
That's true. And I'm always like, please, yeah, you don't see this. This is behind the scenes. But I'm always like, please, Nick, let's do something else. He's like, no.
You're the horror movie guy, all right? That's why I have you here. No, that's not why, folks. I have him here because he's a very good friend of mine, and he's smarter at talking about movies than anybody, including me, especially including me. Actually, every guest I have is better at it than me. But it's a coincidence we've done 3 horror movies, and we're in discussions for other ones for sure. But for right now, I'm leaning on his horror expertise, and I really, really wanted to get this one because you did our last episode that I did with Andres, everybody, was Smile, and I found out on camera, you can watch me find out that a lot of the stuff that happened in Smile was very not regurgitated, but there was a lot of
Maybe like
inspiration,
recycled.
Thank you. There was a lot of recycled tropes and scenes in that movie, and Andres was familiar with all of these. And then I watched Barbarian at home. When you first watched it, did you watch it in the theaters or at home viewing?
Yeah, actually, I watched it in theaters when it first came out, and then I watched it last night at home just to refresh a little bit, which I was really glad I did. It's great on a second watch, honestly.
Okay, so I was gonna. It sounds like you like it.
Yeah, I mean, to spoil my feelings about it, I really like this movie.
Okay. Good. I was wondering about that because I'm going to say right off the bat, I watched Smile in the theater, the ideal scenario for watching a type of movie, dark room, big screen, my phone's gone, and then I liked that movie. But I watched this one at home. It took me a couple days. I didn't even watch it all in one sitting. And it was all the, and then I was busy. All the things conspired against me for have an ideal viewing, and yet I enjoyed this immensely, even more. And not to keep telling everybody what a scaredy cat I am, but I was I was even more scared of Barbarian watching it just as a dude at home than I was of Smile in an actual immersive theater environment. So that's kind of how, at least the horror aspect of it, that's how effective I found Barbarian to be.
Yeah. It's just a good movie. I mean, and it does such a good job of pacing the scares, pacing the horror out, in such a effective way, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that it ramps up. You're terrified, but you're pulled in. There's so many there are some movies that are very scary, but if you're not a horror movie fan, you might just bounce.
Yeah.
Like after, the first, if you're watching something like, I don't know, Hereditary, and
Uh-huh.
there's a very horrifying scene early on into Hereditary. It might be like, ah.
Yeah.
But this one it keeps pulling you in, and it really works with the theme of the film too. Whereas like people in horror movies die because they just can't leave well enough alone.
That's certainly true. Yeah, that is the maybe a complaint about horror movies. It's a ton of why are you going in there? That's
Oh,
what
totally,
everybody.
yeah.
That's what everybody's screaming is don't go in there. Why are you going in there? What is wrong with these teenagers? What is wrong with this single woman by herself? What is wrong with this dude with a limp? Why are you going in there? And that's part of the fun of it. Maybe I know it's like I know it doesn't make sense, and I know none of us in real life would ever do that. We would never go in there. I'm definitely too smart to make bad decisions. I don't ever go in there.
You
But
know, I gotta say, I think I would go in there in a lot of these
I
situations.
think a lot of us would.
Yeah.
It's totally fine for you know why I would go in there? Because I don't believe in monsters.
Exactly.
So
You're
I
like,
can, yeah.
it's not this. You feel that feeling. I'm sure people have that feeling all the time, where it's like, this is, horror movies aren't real, so like, there's obviously not going to be a monster, a murderer in this.
Exactly. That's
Um,
exactly the point. That's what people I forget whenever that criticism comes along of like, why would you ever go into a secret basement you discovered? It's like, well, don't forget, to the characters on screen, they don't know they're in a horror movie. They think they're in real life. And in real life, there's no such thing as monsters or psycho murderers behind walls. I mean, there are, but not, not really.
yeah.
Certainly not surprise ones. But so I could walk into any basement. I'll walk into any basement right now. Okay? Because you know what I know is not down there? A monster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
There might be a nail on the floor that I'm going to step on and get tetanus. There's other problems, but I'm not worried of I'm not worried of something with 5 eyes or 6 fingers or whatever. I'm not worried about that. But yeah, so let's set this up a little bit.
Nick, a lot of people have 6 fingers, and I don't know if I'd call them a monster.
No, I meant like, that's a good point. I don't mean like, well, I don't know. Do a lot of people have 6 fingers on one hand or just in total? I've got 6
total,
plus 4.
Yeah, that's in total would be. It's funny because 6 on one hand is a little too much. 6 altogether would be just a little too little.
Yeah, is right. That's why I just picked a number. You know where I think I got 6 fingers from? I just rewatched both Mortal Kombats, the old one and the new one. And
Goro's.
the 4-armed monster, he's got 3 fingers on each hand. But you know what? That doesn't even make sense because he's got 4 arms, so he's got 12 fingers. You know what? That's not the point. The point is, there's nothing unexpected in most people's basements.
Yeah, that's true. It's usually just garbage.
Yeah, exactly. It's either garbage. The most shocking thing you'll find is somebody's grandfather's like Nazi uniform.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you can find a few of those.
Grandpa's dark secrets.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, this movie Barbarian did keep me interested, and it kept you coming back. I really like the way they kind of structured this thing because it starts off, dear audience, as what we all saw from the trailer, another example of trailer giving way too much information. But young woman traveling by herself, she pulls up to an Airbnb. She can't get the key to get in, knocks on the door. There's already somebody staying there. It's been double booked by the booking company.
Very, very realistic situation that's actually happened to people I know before.
Oh, I'm sure it's happened a ton. Yeah. And then, of course, then the film gives us some, half-cocked reason why she has to stay there. That's always the kind of thing of like, do you have to suspend the disbelief? That's the biggest suspense of disbelief, is that there's not a hotel room in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, she can't find a hotel room. She can't find another place to stay. And then she ends up staying with this dude, which is like, I think that's a little bit unrealistic, just because like, no way would any woman, at least any woman I know, ever end up staying there that night. Like,
no, of course not. Sleep in your car in the parking lot of a hotel that's full. It's a better choice. But
go to Walmart. They have security.
Sure. Yeah, they have that one throwaway line, because anybody watching this is like, go to a hotel, woman. But they have the throwaway line, oh, there's a convention in town. That means there's going to be no hotels available. It's like, I don't believe that. That can't be true. But whatever. This is all just to get us to this place. And of course, she's there with the guy, and they're both uncomfortable around each other. He's acting extra. He's acting very weird, but he's doing it in service of not being weird. When you go out of your way to make someone feel comfortable, and then they're like, "Why are you?"
Yeah, and it's
why are you making me feel this?
This he's such a classic nice guy, in this movie.
Yeah.
For better and for worse, but he's so like, oh, like, I'll make you comfortable. Like, some guys are really bad, so I get why you're afraid,
Of course. And he goes out of the way. The one that gets me is like the wine. He's like, I was like, I want to drink some wine. I didn't open it while you were in the shower, because I didn't want to open it with you not seeing me, in case, you thought something was going to be done to it. And it's just like, look, he's not, I understand the thinking of it, but you can't say it out loud. It's like, it's like if somebody hands you a cup of lemonade and was like, by the way, I didn't piss in the lemonade. I would be like, okay, well, I'm definitely not drinking this lemonade. You know what I mean?
I'm not going to roofie you. Like,
yeah, I know you told me something that you thought would reassure me that there's no urine in this lemonade, but for some reason I'm not reassured by the fact that you even brought it up.
Exactly.
So a lot of that in this movie, or in this setup. And of course, I think we can even tell we do know from the trailer, if you remember this trailer, folks, we do know from the trailer that this guy, whose name I can't even remember, he's a Skarsgård, right?
Keith. It's Bill Skarsgård. The character's name is Keith. Famously Bill Skarsgård, who played Pennywise in the new It movie.
That's right. Yeah, he's the new Pennywise. Anyway, he's our red herring.
Yeah.
He's spoiler alert, he's not the bad guy.
No. And they do a great job too. Like, I didn't mind the trailer actually, because it really set it up like maybe she was going to be trapped with a psychopath, with like this guy who's, staying at the Airbnb, and in reality it turns out he's just a normal dude.
Yes, in reality the true evil was all along is Airbnb. That I've been saying that for years.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you hate Airbnb? Because I hate Airbnb. I hate it.
No, they suck. I mean, yeah, they're not great. Have I stayed in a lot of Airbnbs? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Me too. And
it's especially convenient.
It was is it more convenient? How's it convenient? I don't even understand that, because it's so much worse than a hotel, which is actually convenient. I've done Airbnb a bunch of times, not like for different reasons or for back like big family parties and you want the house to host a party at somewhere. That kind of stuff I guess makes sense. But the days of me and like somebody traveling and like let's get an Airbnb instead of a hotel are over. I'm never doing that again. I'm anti Airbnb.
Wow. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Taking a hard stance. You
This
always
is
take
an
hard
anti Airbnb
stances.
podcast, okay?
This is an anti-Airbnb.
Official let's get trashed policy. Yeah, I just don't like, it's not more convenient. I hate the cleaning fees. I hate that you have to clean everything.
Yeah, you have to clean everything and then there's a cleaning fee.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a little weird, and also like I mean on a like a larger scale, like Airbnbs are pretty bad for housing in general.
oh well, there's always that now the housing supply is being taken off the market and these things are being kept vacant for the majority of the time in order to bring in cash for owners who now own several. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that'll get, I mean, yeah, that is bad. That'll probably get solved if there's like a bubble burst, or whatever.
Yeah,
Kind of like
it's
2008.
it's part of the bubble,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like it's part of the problem, and hopefully it'll be solved when the whole thing collapses. Although you don't want, I mean, it's getting to that point is pretty crappy, but
Well, for sure. But it's like in The Big Short when, uh, or no, what was the
subprime loans were
the
big
subprime
thing.
loans thing, and what's his name? Steve Carell's talking to that exotic dancer, and she's like, "I have 5 houses, all with subprime mortgages, all that kind of stuff." And he's like, "Yeah, we have a bubble. This is gonna burst." But anyway, at some point, this person won't have 5 houses. They'll have to sell off the 4 Airbnb properties, and then that'll become surplus on the market or whatever. It'll go back to the marketplace.
Equilibrium.
Yeah. Ideally, who knows what'll happen? It'll probably not happen. It'll get purchased by BlackRock and then
Yeah, and then
whatever.
and then they'll do something horrible with it. Yeah, I on rewatching this movie, I actually loved that first scene of them in the house. Pretty much that whole first night where they're hanging out and talking.
Yeah.
Because of all of the foreshadowing that they dropped there in that first scene, and I didn't really pick up on a lot of it the first time watching it. I think just as I was so creeped out by the whole situation, being like, is he going to kill her? Is he going to kill her? But rewatching it, knowing what was going to happen, I could kind of more focus on the dialogue, and they lay out so much in that first scene. It's
Really?
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we can talk more about it when we get to spoilers, but
Sure.
that's why I really enjoyed that.
We're in spoilers right now. Let's just get into it. I don't even want to stifle ourselves. And this whole episode will just be kind of like talking about the movie because frankly, it's been out for a while.
Yeah, you should have seen it already.
There's been people that have already talked about it. But there's stuff I want to talk about too. So I'd rather we're in spoilers already, folks. We're just gonna do it. So yeah, go ahead. Because I'm trying to remember it. I've still only seen it the once. I don't really remember any like the foreshadowing of any of that kind of stuff, but I do. I was more focused on a lot of the social commentary stuff, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yes, and that's an important part of this movie too. It does a kick-ass job of throwing in social commentary in there. Honestly,
Interesting. I disagree.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, we'll see some sparks here in a little bit. But
yeah, we'll see.
Let's talk about the foreshadowing. So my favorite one is there's a point where she's talking about her ex-boyfriend Marcus, who he's seen calling her a couple times in the very, very beginning. And she says, "I always go back. I should never go back."
Right.
And then she goes back in the movie twice when she really shouldn't, to rescue guys who totally don't deserve it.
Yes. Well,
I mean, nobody deserves to die. The second guy definitely doesn't deserve to get saved.
true, but she doesn't know that.
And she's just got a good heart too. Like she can't help it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she seems like a sweetheart. The first guy. Okay. The first guy, she doesn't even know. or actually neither of the guys she knows. And so, but the first guy's a nice guy. Skarsgård is, as we find out, once the red herring wears off, he's a genuinely sweetheart of a dude. So he does deserve to get saved, And she has her new friend. She's going down. This is right after we discover the. Not only is there the secret room in the basement, but there's a stairwell. There's a secret tunnel below.
Oh my God, the basement that just keeps getting worse.
Yeah,
it's. I love that scene where she discovers this hidden door in the basement. Well, there's the door. We should talk about the door because it's actually, I think, a big character in this movie. Weirdly, okay. The door to the basement from the house locks automatically from the outside and closes automatically after being left open for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And it's the catalyst for a lot of stuff that happens in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But she gets trapped in the basement the next day, right? After having her nice night with Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah, so it's the next day. He's out doing his errands, and she gets back from her job interview, and then, but he's not there. He's still out doing whatever he's got to do, and while that happens, she gets locked in the basement.
Yeah,
because the door closes on her, and then it almost happens again, and then she, she rightfully stops it. Yeah, but then while she's trapped down there, she looks around. She discovers the secret basement with the video camera room and the bed, that's the creepiest, like,
most horrifying room
set design
in the in the history of rooms. Just a blank white room with blood on the walls, a bucket, a mattress, and a camera. Yeah, that was brutal. I mean, that was very well, like, so starkly designed, and so just looking at it, the second you see this room, you like, this is the worst place. Bad shit happens in there.
This is awful. That's what any normal person should think, and we'll get to it. We'll get to the one guy who doesn't think that, the funniest scene in the movie, a little bit later. But
she's rightly terrified. She's like, I'm out of here. I'm not staying in this house. And once she sees that, which I did appreciate that.
Exactly. She's right. And again, Bill Skarsgård is like all of us. He's like, monsters aren't real. I understand this room is messed up and whoever was, but there's nobody in here right now. Let's walk around. And he somehow finds that other door and goes even further down.
Yeah.
Or is grabbed.
Yeah. A secret under a secret.
Here's the part I don't like about the trailer is him getting hit and everything going black. That is in the trailer.
Yes.
So we know from the trailer he's a victim because we see him get victimized. We see him get hit by
I kind of agree. Yeah, I wish they had left
that's
that part
what I
out
mean.
of the trailer too. Yeah.
If they had left that one part out, I think the trailer would have been better. But it made it too obvious that he's a red herring all through the beginning of the scene. That set up building tension, and then the release of it once they start to trust each other and once they become friends. That was a really, really well done moment, but I think it was hamstringed a little bit by the trailer already showing me that, the tension didn't build as much because I knew from the trailer that this guy was not the bad guy.
And that's another fun piece of foreshadowing from that first scene. Again, there's a point where she mentions, like, guys just walk right in, and that's what he does. Like, he sees this terrifying room, this objectively horrifying room, this terrifying, even scarier descent into darkness stairway, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to check this out. Yeah. Both of the guys in the movie see that and they're like, yeah, I'm going in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's part of the man versus woman commentary that they do, and of course a little bit of the a lot of it, especially from her perspective, or from that character's perspective, is like the abusive relationships. Like I said, I keep coming back to something that, in parentheses, hurts her,
Yeah.
Whether it's even if it's not physical, you know, abuse, the emotional abuse or something that's not good for us. I keep coming back to
Yeah.
something that's not good for me, because of her. I don't know, womanly instincts. Are they saying this is a thing all women do, or it's who knows? But uh, that's one of our commentaries, and I'll start to reveal little by little why I think the social commentary aspect of this movie kind of falls apart. But that's our first chapter. And then I love the smash. We're in this underground tunnel. Smash cut to daylight, broad daylight, Pacific Coast Highway. Dude listening to the worst song ever in his convertible. Justin Long.
Yeah.
That I loved that. And now it's like that first part of the movie didn't even happen. We're just
Yeah.
at a completely separate, completely different thing, and it's great. It's great.
Yeah. Well, in the end of that, like that scene before, she finds Bill Skarsgård, Keith, in that horrible dungeon room, and he's terrified. And then before she can figure out what's going on, a horrifying creature comes out of the darkness and smashes his head against the wall until it bursts. Like
Yeah,
a shockingly violent scene, and then directly from that to Justin Long singing a song in his convertible along the Highway 1. It's wonderful.
yeah. And here's a couple things. One, I mean, happens early on, in keeping with the social commentary thing. Obviously, the current like master of that is Jordan Peele,
Yeah.
who was, if not a producer on this film, I know the writer and director of this film. Jordan
Zach
Peele's
Kreger.
Zach Kreger. Peele is a mentor and a friend to him. So Jordan Peele helped with this film.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But that makes sense.
yeah, Kreger and Peele are friends. Maybe they've even done business in the past. I'm not sure. But as I was reading this movie after I watched it, or reading about this movie after I watched it, it is Peele was involved in some way. I don't know if he's officially credited as a producer. I think he might be, but nevertheless, he was somebody that Kreger, the director, turned to for help, and that's part of, these guys are similar. They're friends and coworkers. They both are kind of socially minded or socially conscious, and they want to put kind of messaging into their films. Peele
Well, they
is
both went
obvious.
from skit comedy to horror, which is
Yes.
fun, which is also a
That's
fun twist.
right, because Kreger was
Whitest Kids You Know.
Whitest Kids You Know, which I haven't seen too much of Whitest Kids You Know, but there's 5 or 6 Whitest Kids You Know sketches that are in my top 10. Like they're some of the funniest sketches ever.
They were good. Yeah.
I mean, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln is one of my favorite ones. Sniper Business is one of the
Yeah.
best things ever. Hot Daughter
I
is
don't remember that one.
Oh.
Oh, maybe I do.
It's so funny. It's the dad and the kid, and then they're eating breakfast, and this daughter comes down, and she's like, "Daddy, is this shirt too tight?" And they're both like not looking at her, and then she leaves, and the son is like, "Dad, why is she so hot?" He's like, "I don't know, dude. It sucks." Anyway, it's so funny. So yeah, Kreger and Peele both went from sketch comedy to horror. That's a really good point. And socially conscious horror.
Yeah.
At both. I love the jump to Justin Long, and now we're at our the Me Too section of our film.
Yeah. 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 The first thing that happens to Justin Long is he gets a call. He's like an actor, like up and coming actor in Hollywood.
Yeah, is it expressly said that he's an actor? Because I missed that. Everybody, the things I've like read about it called him an actor, but he could either be an actor, he could be he could be a director or a showrunner. You know, he could be.
That's a good point.
I don't think they
Yeah, I got
expressly say what his job, although he is accused of assaulting or sexually assaulting an actress.
yes, yes.
I guess it doesn't matter what his role is, but
Yeah, I know. I got the feeling he was an actor, but you're right.
probably.
They
Yeah, that
don't,
makes. I mean, that
not
makes.
necessarily.
Yeah. Either way, he's accused of that. He's off the project, the pilot, the upcoming TV series. He's gone. His accountant drops him.
That first phone call where they tell him that he's off the project is so funny. It's
Yeah,
the comic timing between the characters. That one guy who keeps just saying, "Calm down, just calm
yeah,
down." Like it's great, and that's a fun piece of foreshadowing too, because later on he has a hard time calming down when he really needs to. Like,
yes, that's true. Yeah, so we get to see his fall from grace, or his, we get to see the beginning of his like downfall.
yeah,
And then it quickly goes to, it gives us a bunch of reasons, because frankly, let's be honest, Justin Long is one of the whitest people on earth. There's no other way to get him to Detroit without making him a Hollywood rapist on the lam. That's the only way it makes sense to put Justin Long in a Detroit movie.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So everything
Hollywood
goes.
Rapists on the Lam. Sounds like a fun flick.
Yeah, it sounds like a trauma film.
Yeah.
Anyway, so his accountant drops him. He's not making any new money. He's got to sell a bunch of property. He's got to sell some property he has back in his hometown of Detroit. He has to whatever. He's got to pay his attorney's fees because he's trying to fight this thing in court, blah 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 blah, all that kind of stuff. He then finds himself back in Detroit. He's staying at this same Airbnb, except for the fact that it's his property. He owns this place, and he's complaining about the fact that it wasn't cleaned since the last guests were here. And
yeah, this the Keith and Tess, the main character, their stuff is still there.
Yeah.
And the audience, we have no idea what happened to them. So we're like, well, we know Keith's dead, but we don't know what's happened to Tess. So we're like, oh man, how long's it been?
Right. We don't know how long it's
on.
been either.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Although we can tell it hasn't been too long, because this place wasn't booked between now and then.
Yeah. And there's a throwaway line. I think they're like, last person hasn't been there for a couple of weeks or something.
Yes.
So
yeah, thank you. They do give us a 2-week kind of thing. Either way, it's just all set up. I really love this kind of conceit of the movie, of having these two completely separate storylines. It's almost like a Seinfeld episode. We have different storylines that converge at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And they do a good job of bringing it back, of like, oh, really scary. Now we're kind of back, and it's slowly getting scarier, and then it comes back a little.
Yep. There's a lot of rising and falling tension throughout this film.
Yeah.
And then of course the funniest scene of all is Justin Long, and maybe this is another commentary on the men feeling comfortable in situations where anybody else should feel uncomfortable. He finds a secret hidden basement room. He finds a room with a mattress on the floor and a camera and blood on the walls, and he immediately, the next scene, smash cut to him Googling, can I add that to my square footage on the house?
Yeah, I love that. I love that wrinkle.
It's so funny. It's so fun. And then him walking around with the tape measure as he's trying to just measure the size of the room so he can add it to the square footage to increase the property value of the house that he needs to sell. It made me laugh. It made me laugh so much.
No, he has some great scenes. Justin Long's a good actor. I mean, he's really committed to this sleazeball role in this movie, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah. He's very good. However, and I guess I'll just dive in because I don't want to. We don't need to just go through the whole plot necessarily, but I do want to say what isn't working thus far, or not even thus far. It's still making sense so far, but we're about to get to where the social commentary, in my opinion, starts to lose its effectiveness. Because so far we've seen men versus women abusive relationships. We've seen the like the decay, these the decay of like suburban neighborhoods, and of course the one nice house in this neighborhood, so that's like the beginning of gentrification, perhaps. We've seen the Me Too movement. We're 20 minutes into this thing, and we've had four things being commented on. Oh no, we've had 5, because when she comes back from her job interview earlier, she's about to go into her house, and a man screaming at the top of his lungs, running full tilt towards her, is trying to get her attention. A guy who's presumably a homeless man. So now we've seen like we've seen a 5th commentary on how do we treat the homeless and stuff like that. And then of course he becomes a savior character later.
Yeah, sort of.
Well, he attempts to. It turns out the homeless man who was chasing after you in broad daylight and screaming at you at the top of his lungs, he's actually a good guy.
Actually had your best.
So if I don't know what is wrong with you, entitled middle class woman. I don't know where you get the nerve being scared of a man running at you screaming full volume. But yeah. maybe you should reevaluate the way you look at yourself. That's what I hate about that. We're 20 minutes in this movie and we've already got 5 topics they're trying to cover, and there's 4 or 5 more coming because the police don't believe her. Now we've got the police thing. We've got like we've got white flight from our flashback episode. The actual original homeowner, his neighbor's like, you've seen the neighborhood changing. They try to do too much in this film. There's like 10 societal ills that they bring up, and it at some point I thought it was just kind of an overload. I don't think any of them particularly get addressed too deftly or nuancedly. Certainly, it just became like every few minutes here's a new like social comment that we're positing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see. I can pick up on some of that. The movie goes to a lot of different places. There's a bunch of stuff going on with the characters. There's not really a conversation or a line in this film that's a throwaway line, which one of the things I liked about this movie, everything really served the theme or the plot, and sometimes both. Mm-hmm. Every line is either revealing something about the characters or it's foreshadowing for something else. There's a fun, when I first watched it, I thought it was kind of a throwaway scene, but there's a fun scene with Justin Long's character. What's his name? Man, I'm trying to remember his name. He has kind of a funny AJ, yeah. Mm-hmm. AJ Gilbride. Where he's talking to his friend in a bar.
Oh, that's like, played by the director.
Yeah, that's Zach Cregger. Yeah. His friend's just like, real talk. Like, did you do it? About the whole, getting called out. And he's like, no, dude, like at first she was reluctant, but then eventually she gave in. I'm a persistent guy. By the end of it, she was really, she was really into it.
Right.
Which I love because like, that's that you hear that, from people who've done that. And it sets you up later for, there's a scene towards the end of the film where and I guess since we're in spoilers, I'll just say it, but yeah. He pushes Tess off the top of a water tower so that he can escape the creature. And then, she survives somehow. the creature, I guess, kind of sacrifices herself for her. They all both end up surviving, which is kind of a weird scene. But
Yeah, exactly. It
the he runs down there and he's already starting to rationalize in his head, like, how it
yes,
wasn't his fault. He's like, you were slipping. I didn't even touch you. Like, no, dude,
right.
you threw her off. Like, we all saw it, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. Right. He's a guy that can't take responsibility for his actions. Not only does he do bad actions, but he won't even take responsibility for them,
Yeah, exactly.
which is a double. It sucks, for sure. But I again, I like the way that character is written because that does feel realistic.
Yes.
There are
Yeah.
people we know like that. I don't think I know any Hollywood rapists, but I definitely know people that do shitty things and then rationalize it or
Oh,
um,
totally.
don't
Yeah.
make excuses for their poor behavior, whatever it may be. And you know what? More importantly, we have all done that in some form or another.
Yeah.
We've all made a mistake of some kind and then tried to give ourselves an out instead of facing it head on. It's a tough thing to do as a person. The idea is you want to not do it all the time, like AJ Gilbride does.
Yeah.
It seems to be that's his kind of go-to move. Whatever. He is an actor. He's not. He's just he's guaranteed already a psychopath. So,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
yeah.
Um,
But that was also that social again. That was like I guess that's all part of the Me Too. That's wrapped up with like the Me Too social commentary, but the what people refer to as like rape culture. That idea of teach your boys that no means no. There is no
there's no
persevering
convincing
and
or
convincing
yeah.
them. Um, and so people say that made its way into this film. Him being like, yeah, I'm a persistent guy or whatever he says. You know me.
Yeah. Which
Uh,
is chilling, even though it's it's not a horror part of this film. It's kind of scary to hear that line, because then you kind of can imagine this whole scene where this young actress is like trying to keep her job on this film, but at the same time trying to resist the advances of this dude, and that's a very scary scene because it's very real.
yeah, it is. It does come off as realistic. It also, in a sense, comes off as I could see a scenario where if you just heard that isolated, if that was our introduction to Justin Long, rather than the phone call with his agents on the PCH, if that was our introduction, we didn't know anything else, we didn't hear any of the accusations. If you heard that in a vacuum, you could. He plays it off as casually a thing. You could
Yeah.
believe it. You
Well, I think the point is he believes it.
Well, of course, for the film, but as far as like just regular people, you could hear something like that and chalk it up like, oh, it's just a misunderstanding. He seems pretty casual, and
He sounds very sincere in that scene.
he
You're like, oh
he's
yeah, I think he's telling the truth.
yeah, it must just be a misunderstanding. Hopefully, they get it all worked out between these two people. And of course, we have more context because we're watching a film that's carefully constructed to show us what they want.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I wrote down a few things because then I wrote down, um, like I wrote, one of my notes is this movie's kind of like a Tarantino revenge fantasy. I always say this: the reason like Django Unchained and Inglourious Bastards and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the reason they were so like successful but also kind of cathartic is because people criticize early in his career. People criticize Tarantino for his excessive violence. His movies are too bloody and violent, and then he makes a movie where they shoot Hitler with a machine gun 400 times, and they kill a bunch of Nazis in these really gruesome ways. And it's like, well, criticize me for violence now, asshole. You can't, because I'm being violent to Nazis. And if you complain about me being violent to Nazis, what does that mean? You're on the so he isolated himself from the violence criticism by making his bad guys Nazis or slave owners
Or the Manson family.
or the Manson family. He's slamming a girl's head into a brick fireplace in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it's like, No. You can't get mad at me for hitting a girl's head into a brick fireplace. She's a Manson that she was trying to kill Sharon Tate. That's so he gets away with violence by making the the recipients of that violence be historically the worst people ever. Nazi
Someone
slave owners. Yeah,
we all agree is
we
bad.
should all be rooting for it.
Which is like, I like Tarantino. I think that's a little bit lazy. Like, I think it's like if your villains don't have a lot of nuance. If it's like, well, it's Nazis, they're bad. Like, it's okay to do whatever you want to them. I think it's fun. I don't think it's necessarily like. I mean, I don't know. I tend to like when the bad people are more sympathetic, I guess, maybe.
More realistic, yeah.
Yeah.
Although, again, he does give us the one Nazi he gives us is Christoph Waltz. That's the one with maybe not sympathetic, but he's charming. He is such a powerful character.
Yeah.
That makes up for that. Yeah, all the other ones are very one dimensional. Just whatever Nazis that his gang is capturing and cutting things off their scalping and all that kind of stuff. But he gives us one character to like focus on as this is actually two, because he gives us the film star as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he gives us that guy. But either way, so now we're seeing. Anyway, now I'm just like, oh, what, you work in film? What a coincidence! The guy that owns this house is also a Hollywood rapist. Or the only person. Oh, look who's getting raped now, Mr. Hollywood Big Shot, because he's now trapped in a dungeon and being forced to suck, on the teat of like the giant monster. It's you're fine with this happening to Justin Long a little bit in the same kind of vein. That connection stuck out to me. Yeah, let's talk about our monster.
Yeah, let's talk about our monster. Speaking of sympathetic characters,
I don't know.
Well, honestly, like especially towards the end of the film, I felt pretty bad for her. Like, you have this. You kind of learn a bit more about her backstory, but basically the story of the monster is she's the inbred daughter of a serial killer who had been torturing and raping women in the basement of his home for 30 years or whatever.
Yeah, well, even longer, because I guess it was from the 50s.
I think they flash back to a point in the 80s, and he's already been doing it for a while.
He's been doing it for a while, yeah.
But I think the flashback happens right before the birth of the monster.
Okay. Yeah, and I what I really love about that flashback, I love the color. I love the way it looks so like vivid, and also they change aspect ratio there. So because it's the 80s, they didn't have widescreen TVs, so it's 4:3. It's like a square. It's a square aspect ratio, which is a cool.
No, that flashback is wonderful.
Yeah, really good. That's where we get our white flight social comment.
Oh yeah, that line I remember.
Yeah, the neighbor going like the neighborhood's going to hell. We're moving out. He's like, I'm not moving out, and they don't know it's because he spent all this time building Rambo tunnels underneath his house.
So he could torture people down there.
Yeah. And then, yeah. So yeah, he's been kidnapping and sexually assaulting and raping women and impregnating some of them and raising the babies and stuff like that. And at some point, I don't know how long that's the thing is, I don't know how many generations have to happen before he gives birth to a 7-foot tall monster. Who's also credited as the mother, and that's kind of the thing we see is that she has these maternal instincts for some reason.
Yes, well, she's been watching the same baby care video.
That's what it
on
was.
VHS for 30 years.
Yes,
30 years. She even though she has very limited mental facilities, you get the idea that she is obsessed with being a mother, with
right.
with having a baby to take care of.
Yeah, and then that's
all she knows is
credited
violence.
All she knows is violence. Yeah, she's in a rough situation. I'm not. I'm not I'm not denying that. Um, you know, she so this yeah. Anyway, the film, if you watch the credits, she's the mother. That's actually the name of the monster. I will say same thing I said in our Smile episode. Frankly, once I see the monster, I'm no longer. I have a hard time maintaining like a level of not interest, but I'm no longer scared once I see the monster. And they did it kind of early. We caught a glimpse of the monster uh,
They do a
pretty early on.
decent job of obscuring her in ways or showing her for brief moments, where so they're not, exactly showcasing her
Yeah,
full glory all the time. I do think that it does, I mean, obviously anytime you see a monster, see something, it's not going to be as scary as what you have in your head.
right.
And the more you see it, the more familiar you get with it and the less scary it becomes. But they do a good job of, there's a great scene. I think one of the creepiest scenes with her, she's sort of slowly coming out of the darkness and you can start to see her,
Mm-hmm.
her silhouette. She's very, man, the design is amazing. I love the design of the monster. Uh, she's really scary.
Yeah, it's very weird. Again, it's giant. I have one of my notes is, has this monster bitch just been doing push-ups for 40 years? Why is she so strong?
freaky strong, man. So strong.
She should be vitamin D deficient. Hasn't seen sunlight, pale white, but crazy strong. um, and then yeah, there's a Chekhov's gun in this. Justin Long gets his hands on a gun when he escapes from the dungeon, and
he takes it actually from the old serial killer guy, which is
he takes it from the old man, who is also living down there in the deepest part of the tunnel.
Oh my god, the VHS tapes, just the titles. What a great scene.
Yeah, that's very creepy. He's just bedridden, surrounded by his VHS tapes of all the from that camera in that first room where he committed all his. He's just rewatching his rapes and tortures. This guy's a nightmare, dude.
And the titles of the VHS tapes have things like Puker, Screamer, like Crier, Redhead, like just creepy stuff.
Yeah, well,
like,
and it had like where he abducted like Redhead from the pharmacy.
Yeah, just yeah, horrifying. What a great! I mean, that's a great way that you can show and not tell, right? And
yes,
in a film and really evoke a strong feeling without barely showing us anything but a few VHS tape titles. Very powerful stuff, I think.
Yeah, that was why, and the fact that he would even like go through he's crazy enough to like title them.
Oh, yeah,
this dude made his videos, put it on videotape, and then he got a little white label, and then he got a marker and wrote on it. Psychopath.
Yeah, it's so mundane and chilling at the same time.
Yeah. Anyway, he gets a gun from that. Tess, our hero, goes back in after the police don't believe her again. So she goes looking for the police to help. The police won't help. Because we don't believe women. There's another social comment. The police are bad in general. That's another social comment.
I think the police suck in this, but I will say on rewatch, I'm like, man, I get why they didn't believe her. She has no keys for the house. She's like super dirty and looks like she's been like living in a ditch. Like,
she doesn't do a good job of being like, this is my car.
Yeah.
Oh, this I have something that can kind of ID me in my open this car, get out from the glove compartment. You'll see my name on the title. You'll see my home address where I'm actually from, whatever. But also she should have tried more than if the first two cops you see don't help you, find a phone and just like call the local precinct and explain it
or whatever.
Yeah, explain it to somebody. But yeah, they accuse her of being on, you're dirty and you're black, you're probably on drugs. That's what they're saying to her. Anyway, she goes back into the house to save Justin Long, who she doesn't know is a bad guy.
Well, first she gets her keys runs back to her car and then sees the mother come out and hits her with her car
Oh yes.
before she goes back in. So she kind of like angrily drives, basically
Drives into
smashes her car
the side of the house.
into the side of the house where, and then the woman just punches the windshield, breaks it. And you're like, damn, she's strong.
Yeah, she's very
another
strong.
scene of being like, dang, so strong.
That might be where I had has she just been doing push-ups for 40 years? Anyway.
Yeah, and then she goes back down into the basement.
Yeah, she goes back out in the basement. She gets shot. Justin Long shoots the first person he sees, happens to be the woman trying to save him.
Yeah.
So no matter what, he keeps hurting women. He can't help himself. He's a dude who hurts women. Whether it's, that's all he does. Anyway, they go back and then they get saved again by the crazy, in quotation marks, the crazy homeless guy from earlier who was shouting. He shows up and he gets them to safety. The safety of his
his little
place.
camp or whatever.
His little camp hovel, wherever he's hanging out.
And he kind of gives them the backstory then on and for the audience too, a little bit of the backstory on who the mother is.
Yeah, and I have another comment about him because from his earlier scene, because we find out he was a warning. He was warning her.
Yeah.
From his earlier scene, he's shouting and yelling and chasing at her, and she's trying to get inside the house, and she thinks that somebody dangerous is after her. Frankly, it's his fault. All right, dude, you can approach people better than that. I wrote, there's got to be a better way to approach people, and it reminded me of that scene. Sideshow Bob is out of jail. Bart Simpson is terrified. Homer kicks open the door to Bart's bedroom in the middle of the night and says, "Bart, do you want to see my brand new chainsaw?" And he's like shaking the chainsaw around, and Bart screams. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, boy." And then he leaves, and then Homer comes back in. Bart, check out my new knives I got. He's just like, Homer's just trying to. I was like, Homer, you're scaring the dog shit out of this child.
Yeah,
but that's what this homeless guy is doing with his. You gotta not be Homer Simpson.
Read the room, bro. Yeah, of course she's gonna be terrified of you if you run up on her being like, "Get out of that house."
Yeah, if you're trying to spread your message, you have to be smarter than Homer Simpson. That's all we ask. But he just keeps doing the.
Well, and that's a low key theme of this movie too. Is people can't keep their shit calm, because there's like that whole thing with the mother. Like if you're agitated around her, she'll be agitated, and that's what causes her to kill.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. And then we'll skip ahead. He's another very funny scene. He goes, they're like, "Are we safe in your little camp here, Mr. Homeless Man?" He's like, "You're totally safe here. I've been here
for 15 years and she's never come.
She's never been. She can't get in here." He's barely done with the sentence. It's comical. The sentence is barely out of his mouth when she bursts through the brick wall like the Kool-Aid Man, and it's just she tears
his arm off.
Yeah. She starts wilding out as they say on MTV. She just starts going nuts. So that was very funny. And then they run up to the top of a water tower. We mentioned that in order to save himself, Justin Long throws Tess off the water tower.
Jeez.
And then what made me laugh is that the mother, our monster, she does the Batman jump.
She throws herself off the water tower to save Tess.
When the Joker threw Rachel out of Bruce Wayne's penthouse, Batman jumps down to catch her and then lands on his back. That's exactly, they copied that. They just did the Batman jump, but it was a monster. So I guess I'd just say like my thing is like pick a thing. Because the social commentary, it's certainly interesting and it elevates horror movies to a level. That's why I think horror movies have done it. I mean, Jordan Peele's obviously like the king of the hill right now. He's the guy who's doing it best and most effectively. But that's been a staple of horror genre forever. I think it's I think it's better to just be a little more concise. Just pick a thing instead of trying to like connect everything. Pick two or three, and then see how those relate. But I don't know. I thought it was just too many.
Yeah, the movie has a lot going on, honestly. For being kind of a small-ish like scale, there's
Yeah.
only a few actors. It has a lot going on, which I liked, but I can see that throwing people off too, because
Hmm.
it's daunting, especially when you don't know what you're getting into to watch this and be like, am I supposed to be paying attention to this character? Like, is this character bad? Is this like I don't
Yeah.
know where I'm supposed to be on like on how I feel about things. But I did love, and I think that what I liked about it, especially on rewatch, was realizing that I think that what it was really, I guess, maybe trying to go for, at least in my opinion, was the different ways that men can victimize women. And from Bill Skarsgård's character to the cops to Justin Long's character to this old man serial killer guy, it's all they're all participating in. Even Bill Skarsgård, who's a good guy, just can't he won't let Tess leave the house. He forces he basically kind of screws her over because he goes to that basement when he didn't need to at all, and then begs for her help to get him out of there.
That's. I mean, the okay. Yeah, that's a little unfair. um, I think he's going out of his way, especially early on, especially that first night. He's going out of his way to be a gentleman. Even the thing of like, and I get it. I also am not persistent. He's a persistent guy, like Justin Long. He's persistent in his Southern hospitality values or wherever this guy's from.
Yeah,
He's like, I'm not going to let a woman sleep on the couch. You can take the bed, and then we'll do all the laundry and all everything. We'll turn this into a 4 hour fucking ordeal while I wash all the sheets for you. Um, you know, he's like, nope, you can stay here. Whatever. He's doing all these like maybe that's a comment on like outdated chivalry. Let
yeah. I
let
mean,
that
it's pretty uncomfortable. Like, even though you don't, even in the beginning, when you're
yeah.
not sure if he's a bad guy or not, like a lot of his stuff that he does, there's a scene where he's like, well, I guess I'm going to sleep on the couch, and she's just like, all right. And then they're just
Mhm.
standing there and you're like, oh God, like that's so uncomfortable. Like,
Oh, you think he was
I think he was hoping that she'd
yeah,
she'd invite him
that
to stay in the bed
that's
with
pretty
her.
funny. Maybe.
That's kind
But
of the feeling I got. But
but by that point that was when uh they had become friends at that point.
yeah, yeah. When she ends up, I mean, she is interested in him too.
Yes.
Like, she makes that pretty clear. I don't like to say, like, I don't think he's like a villain essentially, but I think his masculinity, his toxic masculinity, his desire to protect and be the strong man and go and check out this basement that they have no reason to check out, like, is a catalyst. At least it is the catalyst for setting off the events that
Yes, it does. It does kind of start this, except for the fact that the monster did come creeping around that first night.
that's true.
She woke him up. She's saying like, "Did you unlock my door? Did you do all this kind of stuff?" He's like, "What? No, get away from me." Um, it's the middle of the night, and she's like, "I'm sorry."
Yeah, that's a great scene too.
That is a good scene, but so this monster might have just kidnapped them if they slept together the middle of the next night, or even if they maintained separate sleeping areas for the next night. Monster might have just kidnapped them anyways.
Oh yeah, I mean,
That's
they
what
really
the
should have
monster
just
does.
yeah, they really should have just left.
Oh, 100%. But also, like you said, he shouldn't have gone into this crazy room that he has no reason to check out. The reason he has no reason not to check it out because there's no such thing as monsters.
I mean,
Until you
I would check it out too.
yeah, until you see one, then all of a sudden there is such thing as monsters. But for him, in his mind, why can't I check out this weird room? As long as there's nobody in there, and there's definitely no such thing as monsters or ghosts. So fucking let's look around. But yeah, if you want to call him if you want, that's you're putting a lot of blame on this poor bastard.
Oh no, I mean I'm not doing it. The film's doing it. But I
Well,
think
yeah,
that's what I think is like that each of these men in this film represent like even without maliciously, he's not malicious in any way, I don't think.
right.
But he is a villain in the sense that his stupidness, his pigheadedness, his
Hmm.
his desire to to be this man is one of the things that catalyzes these set of next horrifying events that happen over the course of the film.
Yes,
And
that is true.
I think what really for me uh, locked that in as the theme of the film is when Tessa's character realizes that the mother, the monster, is a victim too. And
Hmm.
she doesn't like because in the very big, when she hits her with the car, it's angry. It's like you kept me down there. You're a monster. Like
Yeah.
I'll kill you. And then in the end, when she spoiler, when she shoots, she picks up the gun after after Justin Long's head gets ripped in half.
Uh huh.
And I kept thinking of the another great foreshadowing line from the beginning when Bill Skarsgård goes, "Girls can rip."
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Girls can rip. Girls can rip.
And then she tears his head in half, which is
That's
such
a
a
really great point. That's a great foreshadow. I didn't remember.
yeah. I only caught it in the second time, but then yeah, when she shoots her, I mean, she's obviously like, oh, this crazy thing is not going to let me go. Like, I need to kill her to save myself.
Hmm.
It's with sadness because it's like this poor thing has been trapped in this dungeon, like
Yeah.
for her whole life, like raised by a serial killer. She's inbred. She's clearly mentally handicapped. Like, um, so I thought that was kind of a touching moment, and in that moment, I was like, man, the real monster of this film was really Justin Long, but in a way,
No.
it was really the old serial
The real
killer.
monster is the man in the dungeon who's been raping and kidnapping women for
That's
70
true.
years.
He's the real monster. But
Yeah,
then yeah,
he's monster number one.
yeah, and then I would go in descending order: him, Justin Long, the Airbnb rental company, that door that
Oh,
closes
you know
automatically.
what? I take it back. I'm re-ranking Airbnb and VRBO. Those are one and two. Airbnb
The
is the
cops.
Yeah, Airbnb is the worst. Then we have our over the top uh 80s rapist man. And then we have, you know what? I understand that the mother is supposed to be a sympathetic villain character, but I'm going to be honest. She's cracking heads open and keeping people like in dungeons. I'm putting her above Justin Long. Justin
I
Long is
mean,
bad,
that's
but
that's fair. That's
he doesn't
fair.
have an actual dungeon that he keeps his victim in.
That's
He has a
true.
moral gray area that he enters and justifies. We're almost out of time. Andres, thank you so much again. I
Oh,
appreciate
thanks
you
for
coming
having
on,
me.
and we'll do another one. I have a really interesting non-horror one I want you to talk with me about.
Looking forward
But
to
we'll
it.
talk about it off camera. We're about to be out of time. Thanks everybody. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment and all that kind of stuff. Let us know what you thought of this movie, and let us know which one of us is right. Although we didn't really disagree that much.
Not too bad.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much, buddy. I really appreciate it.